Welcome to another edition of the Backyard Professor podcast series, where I get to do all the talking and you get to do all the listening and the learning. I'm Kerry Schertz, the Backyard Professor. I've had an article for quite a little bit of time that I've been wanting to somehow incorporate into my Backyard Professor blog. And I've decided, well, now that I'm doing podcasts, I've decided this actually might make a very good podcast, and it really does have direct relevance to my series of podcasts on the Trinity and how this doctrine is one of the doctrines that are used to exclude Mormonism from Christianity. Because if you're not a Trinitarian, you're not a true Christian. This is the basis of the argument against the Latter-day Saints being Christian. This is one of them, I should say, probably the main one, because our whole doctrine of God is skewed, apparently, and because it is so skewed, we can't possibly be Christian. The assumption is, of course, that there is a standard way of believing about Christ, and that Christians have always believed this way, and in order to be a true follower of Christ, you must have the true doctrine. Now, Bart Ehrman, in his book Lost Christianities, which I happen to have brought with me, thank goodness, he has shown really powerfully that even in the earliest of days in Christianity, there was no single unity of thought whatsoever by any of the Christian groups. But that did not exclude them from being Christians until later, that is. Unfortunately, the Christianity became an exclusivist religion. Now, this is another real interesting thing. They developed the point to where if you didn't think about Christ in this way, now the warring factions, the faction who won out, the faction who became the state religion under Constantine, ended up having imperial power to impose its will on all the other groups, and so, of course, all the other groups were stamped out as heretics, and their doctrines were eliminated, supposedly, from Christian thinking, and there was a standard right way. This, and only this manner of thinking about Christ, would allow you to be a true Christian. All others were anathemized. It's interesting in light of the current argument going on right now against Mormonism claiming to be the only true church with the authorized authority. This offends many Christians. They want to know, well, why can't all churches be true? Because they're all trying to lead us back to God anyway. And they say, if you Mormons would just drop this teaching that you are the one true church, then we could accept you into Christianity. Now that's interesting. What about it? Are the Christians willing to drop this idea that there's only one exclusive way to think about Christ, or you can't be a Christian? You see the problem there. Well, anyway, I have a very interesting gentleman's articles. I have a couple of them that I want to make podcasts out of that are extremely interesting in light of this idea of what constitutes Christianity and what constitutes non-Christian thinking. Norman L. Geisler. Now, he is the dean of the Southern Evangelical Seminary in Charlotte, North Carolina there. He has, in the past, written a few articles against the LDS concepts and doctrines, and so he is a well-known evangelical, and he's certainly representative of evangelical Christianity, I would propose, yes. And he has put together an article in the Evangelical Theological Society Journal. This is March 1999. A very beautiful, interesting article that I think is important for all of us to understand. And I find myself in very good agreement with him in many respects. There are some things, of course, that I'm going to disagree with him on as well. The name of his article is Beware of Philosophy, a Warning to Biblical Scholars. Now, that is an interesting title, isn't it? Apparently, there are numerous modern philosophies that are supposed to be creeping into Christianity, evangelical Christianity especially, And this bothers Geisler. He says we have to be aware of these, and we have to not let them contaminate our pure Christian thinking. Now, he doesn't say it that way, I do. But that is the spirit and intent of his article. And he names several of these different philosophies that some friends of his, some evangelical scholars, have been utilizing and understanding and writing about in their writings. And because of this, he believes that they are proclaiming strange twists to the Christian doctrine. There are problems with how they are elaborating the gospel, how they are teaching what the scriptures really mean. And some of these are very, very revealing how he describes what is going on with several of his Christian friends, and I want to get into them. Now, he begins by saying that the context of where he gets his idea, beware of philosophy, of course, is out of the writings of St. Paul. It's in Colossians 2:8. And the context, of course, is some kind of a proto-gnostic type of philosophy that Paul is arguing against. The implications of Paul's exhortation to beware of philosophy, these are appropriately applied to other alien systems of thought that have invaded Christianity down through the centuries since then. Now, this is interesting because Robert Eisenman now and Jeffrey L. Boots and several of the different evangelical scholars and other types of Jewish scholars in their scholarship with James, the brother of Jesus, they have shown that one of the alien systems of thought is Paul himself. Now, there's irony for you, isn't it? I thought that was extremely interesting that Norman Geisler is saying these are some of the modern currents and alien systems of thought that are now creeping into Christianity. The first one is naturalism, that there is no supernatural situations occurring. This is on page, this is on page 3 of his article. He goes through and he lists several of them. Agnosticism, evolutionism. He discusses progressivism. He talks about existentialism. He brings out some ideas on phenomenology, conventionalism, processism, Platonic allegorism. That's kind of interesting how he says, I could speak of the Platonic allegorism that has been in the church since Origen, which in the mutated form of Jewish midrash. Now, this is interesting. It's been in the church since Origen, he admits, and yet he's arguing against Platonic allegorism. And of course, one of the main Christian ways of interpreting the scriptures is through allegory, and it is through allegory that some of the Christian teachings have been argued against the LDS teachings because the LDS teachings have been so literal. Geisler isn't saying that, I am. But I believe this is very interesting, kind of ironic, in an ironic vein, because some of our very literal beliefs in many of the doctrines of the scriptures have been allegorized away. Hugh Nibley was big on that. Richard Hopkins is big on that in some of his material.